Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our third episode here at Runs and Acceleration, again with Ruhan and myself, Akash. Today's episode is going to be our first episode actually on the Formula One season, and we're really excited to share some of our insights and some of our analysis on what's been going on this season and what we kind of anticipate.
So, as Akash said, this is a very big one for us. It's our first F1 podcast, and also because it's a very interesting time of the season. We are going into our first triple header in Formula One, which is 3 weekends back to back. They're going to be races. So it's pretty exciting. It's not happened a lot in Formula One history. This is
Yeah.
only like the second time it's happening in the last decade or so. So
Mhm.
really excited. A lot of racing to look forward to. And I think without further ado, let's get into it.
Yeah, of
So
course.
I think for a lot of people, Akash, it's very important we explain how an F1 weekend works
Yeah.
because everyone knows there's a race on Sunday, but
Yeah.
there F1 there's a lot that goes
Yeah,
behind, right?
it's a little bit complicated. There's a little bit a little bit to it. So essentially how an F1 weekend works is there's basically we start on usually around a Thursday, around a Friday, kind of depends on the track that you're going to. But what happens is on a Thursday is you have on Thursday to Friday, you have almost Thursday to Saturday, I would say, you have
Yeah.
three practice sessions. Okay. These practice sessions are really mainly to, first of all, to use to kind of gather data because these are, first of all, when with F1 cars, you're dealing, of course, with the drivers, but you're mainly dealing with the technology of the
The
cars.
machine.
Yeah,
Correct.
exactly. You're dealing with a full machine. I think it's very different from other different kinds of sports because this is very much a technology driven sport.
Definitely.
And with the F1 cars, each car is kind of has its own advantages and its limitations on a given track. There might be tracks that
Yes.
are really quick, and that are really quick that can be really great for some cars. Or there's some tracks that are pretty slow, for a little bit slow. You have to really watch. It's maybe a little bit more compact spaces, and it all really depends on the car that you're in. So the practice sessions really are mainly used for data gathering and making sure that the drivers feel very comfortable getting get good laps there so that they can really go out there and perform on the
Yeah.
qualifying in the race.
The only thing with Thursdays, the reason we say is because Thursdays sometimes there's practice sessions
Mhm.
because, for example, a race that recently happened, Monaco, they have a rule they don't want to do practice on Friday, so they do it on
Yeah.
Thursday. But
Mhm.
also Thursday is a track walk with your team to really look at, really walk over each corner, every
Mhm.
straight, look at what it is like. And then Akash explained the Friday session, which are the practice sessions. So two practice sessions on Thursday and Friday typically, and depending on the track you're on. And then on Saturday we go into the qualifying, which I think the most underrated part of the sport, Akash, and I feel
Yeah.
because this is the
Mhm.
day the cars are at their absolute fastest.
Mhm.
Okay, so on Saturday morning, you have the third and final practice session, 1 hour. Basically, go out there, get all your data gathering done, run practice programs, which is
Mhm.
in Formula One practice programs could be go for a run with a lot of fuel and maybe a tire which lasts long, or maybe look at your 1 lap pace. How fast can you go if you're just focusing on 1 lap? And then comes qualifying. So, guys, qualifying is the most important thing in Formula One now because overtaking is not that easy anymore. Qualifying is basically the 20 drivers trying to put their best lap, and whoever is the fastest starts on pole position or first place for the race on Sunday. It works in 3 segments. There's Q1, Q2, and Q3, and all 20 cars go into Q1. The five slowest cars, based on their times, get their grid positions allotted at the end of Q1 and they're knocked out. Then the top 15 go into Q2. Again, the slowest five get their grid positions accordingly. And then the final 10, their positions are decided in the all important Q3.
Mhm.
And there's a slight trick to this. The teams that go into Q3 or the final top 10 have to start their race on the tires they used in Q2. This
Mhm.
is to give the people who start outside of the top 10 an advantage so they can probably start on fresher tires or different strategies. Whereas, the top 10 are bound by their fastest tire, which is usually the least lasting. And we'll explain the tires
Yeah.
to you in a minute.
Mhm.
And finally, so yeah, Q3, 10 minutes, give your fastest lap, and whoever is the fastest gets pole, which is usually the best place to win from.
Yep. Yeah. So the one thing also you mentioned really quickly on the tires, I think it's really important. The tires are actually super easy to understand. We have
Yes.
I mean, it used to be kind of complicated back in Formula One, but with rule changes,
Very complicated.
but rule changes now. There's only mainly actually five tire compounds that you really have to know. But three really that are mainly used. So on tracks that are dry, which is most of the time, when it's when it's not raining, you have from the fastest all the way to the slowest, you have the softest tire, which are soft tires. You have the medium tires, and then you have the hard tires. So essentially, your strategy revolves around this. Do you want to start off with the hard tires, maybe last for a little bit longer, have that kind of strategy, and then maybe have a pit stop later, or do you want to go out straight away with your fastest tires? And also, this is all depending on the track, how great your car is suited to those tires, how they feel. So all those things that teams have to take in consideration. And just with those other two tires that I was just talking about was those are for really for the wet races. There's the wet, and then there's the inter tires. These two are really, if it's really pouring, then on the wets. If it's just like drizzling but it is wet still there, then they'll probably be on the intermediates. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and also it's very important. There's a rule in Formula One which says that if a race is run and there's no rain, the rule is that you have to use at least two different tire compounds out of the three dry sets. So you have to do either a soft and a medium tire compound, or medium and hard, depends which way you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's much simpler now. I remember just a few seasons ago, there were 12 different compounds, and some of the names were a little weird. So there were tires which were called, instead of being soft, medium, and hard, there was, subcategories. So there was super soft, ultra soft, hyper soft. They have, and to identify the tires, there's normally a ring with a color on the rim. So softs are usually in red, yellow is the medium, and white is the hard. But you had, pink, you had purple, and then you even had orange and blue for the hards. And again, weird names, super hard, ultra hard.
Exactly.
So I think it's good they made it a little simpler for all of us to understand. And now coming to the race, obviously, race first to the finish, to the pit stops, like we said. And we're talking about the race because the upcoming three racetracks, actually, it's only two racetracks because we are going to be racing in Austria twice.
Yep.
And if you look at both of these tracks, France has Le Castellet, and Austria has the Red Bull Ring. These are tracks which are very power centric, very long straights, just a few corners, and it's all about engine power and top speed. So for people who like speed, you will enjoy these tracks.
Yeah. I think this is when we look at these kinds of tracks, this is where you start to see a little bit of a divide between the top teams and the bottom teams, because this one is really dependent about how powerful your engine is, and I think this gives a perfect segue into probably talking on the teams that are probably doing really good. And those two teams are, as in the standings right now, are Mercedes and Red Bull.
Red Bull.
So I think I don't know how we want to start this off, but I think the one thing is that
let's just go over the championship standings, right? So right now, Red Bull leads the teams championship by around 25-26 points over Mercedes. And in the drivers championship, the all important drivers championship, we have Max Verstappen, the young charger from Red Bull, leading the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes by just 4 points. And also one small thing in Formula One, normally you'd associate one team with one car and one driver. Formula One, you actually run two drivers for each team. So the team championship is based on how many points both drivers together can get. And in the case that one driver is injured or leaves early, then whoever comes in next, his points are also added to the teams. And this is really important because it's not just about having the best driver in your car, but it's having maybe the two best drivers Or maybe Akash, I think you will agree with this. Sometimes it's about having the rear gunner to support your best driver, which is something Mercedes has done a lot, right?
Yeah. So right now, Mercedes, of course, they have seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, one of the greatest drivers probably we've ever seen in the history
True,
of Formula One.
definitely.
And then they've got Valtteri Bottas. He's from Finland. A really a pretty strong driver. I mean, to get into a Mercedes seat, which is they've Mercedes have been dominating F1 for the last decade, maybe a little
I
bit
think,
more now.
yes,
Yeah,
7 years, right?
yeah,
Last
it's
seven
been
years ever
7, yeah, but
since.
like, yeah, it's been a crazy good from them. And then we're seeing a kind of a resurgence in Red Bull, where they have, as Ruhan was explaining, the Dutch young fast driver Max Verstappen, who's been in Formula One for now a little bit and has been quite strong this year, and the Mexican driver Sergio Perez also alongside him. So I think the biggest thing that like maybe we can start straight away is talking about maybe this battle that we have between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. It's
Absolutely.
yeah, it's probably, I think, the one thing, Formula One maybe has copped a little bit is, sometimes the driver championships kind of take, they kind of, whoever gets the first
They've
place kind
not
of
been the
becomes,
best, have they?
yeah, it
Let's
kind
be
of becomes
honest.
irrelevant, because Lewis has been and just incredible, really consistent. But I think we're really seeing a proper battle in our hands. Just what are your thoughts on it, about Max really
Yeah,
being the
so
challenger? Yeah. Hmm.
I think it's great to see because ever since 2014, when Formula One entered a new era called the turbo hybrid era,
Hmm.
Mercedes has won every drivers' championship and teams' championship. Six of them with Lewis. The only time Lewis was beaten was by his own teammate Nico Rosberg, and Nico retired the next day.
Hmm.
So, just when we thought there was going to be a fight on our hands, it disappeared. Yes, there's been competition by Ferrari and Sebastian in a few years,
Hmm.
but um, it hurts me to say this, but yes, Ferrari really threw themselves in the well. Like
Yeah.
they hung themselves with some of the mistakes they made
Hmm.
strategically, and even Vettel having a big dip in form, the
Yep.
Spinala.
Yeah.
So, as you're saying with Max, it's very refreshing to see that there's more than one team that's in the championship, because as much as it's fun to see maybe an inter-team battle where both drivers have the exact same car, I
Hmm.
think it's a little boring because both cars have the exact same strengths and weaknesses.
Yep.
Whereas
Hmm.
here you have a Red Bull, which I think for the upcoming races should be really good because their engine, the Honda engine, is the most powerful this year.
Yep.
So
Hmm.
on these straights, and definitely going to Red Bull Ring, their
Hmm.
home circuit, Max has won there twice before. I think it should really give them a chance to extend their championship lead. On the
Hmm.
other hand, Mercedes is really good with their aerodynamics and shaping their car for every
Yep.
race. And we can be sure that Lewis is going to drive the hell out of it on Saturday
Yep.
and get
Hmm.
the best grid position possible.
Yep.
So I think it's pretty interesting. The only concern I have is Max is leading the championship for the first time in his life.
Yep.
And even though he's a really talented driver, he's never actually been in that position.
Hmm.
He was 16 when he came into Formula One,
Yep.
straight from the junior categories of Formula 3 and before that karting.
Hmm.
But he didn't ever win. He was a prodigy because he won races, but not championships.
Yep.
So, Akash, what do you think? Can he keep that championship lead, the all
Hmm.
important lead at the biggest stage in the world? Or will the seven-time champion have an ace up his sleeve?
Look, I think that's the question, I think, with almost every single F1 fan is probably asking themselves right now. In my opinion, I actually am going to give this one. I actually think Max can do it. I think for some reason, I feel if you take a look at like Max's kind of previous seasons, he's always been known as the fast driver who's just, he's a fast driver. Yeah, he'll maybe get, he's really talented, wins a race here and there, gets a podium quite often. Great driver, but it's not someone who's going to be in and out always consistently. I think the one thing
Exactly.
is I'm really seeing him to be um, a very different driver this year. I'm seeing him to be number one, really quick, but also but just very, very consistent this year. And I think those are some big plus points for Red Bull. Yeah.
True. So I think now let's move on from, obviously this championship battle will be exciting and they will be fighting for the wins. But let's look at the Chargers, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Chargers in McLaren, who've had some great seasons. 2018 they finished second last in the team championship. Last year they were third. This
Mm-hmm.
year again fighting for third, and potentially with next year, we are going into an other new era with cars which are going to be very different. And
Mm-hmm.
McLaren have invested a lot of money in that, so we might see them fighting for wins again. The biggest, I think, news for them is their old rivals Ferrari coming back to form.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Ferrari having a disastrous 2020, not
Mm-hmm.
leading a single lap throughout the season. I think probably their worst season ever. Even with two proven race winners, a four-time champion who they sacked. There was a lot of drama,
Mm-hmm.
an illegal engine controversy, which is maybe why the engine isn't where it should be.
Yep.
But we're seeing a comeback. And it's very important for these two teams to do well. I know Red Bull and Mercedes have their fans, but most of these fans are people who started watching in the last decade.
Yeah.
For people who've truly watched Formula One in the prime, I
Mm-hmm.
think we know it was always Ferrari versus McLaren. It was
Yeah.
Niki Lauda versus James Hunt. Some of you might have watched that in the Rush movie, which had Chris Hemsworth.
Yep.
From the 70s to Ayrton Senna and Alan Prost in the late 80s and 90s, and then Schumacher versus Hakkinen in the 90s again, the 2000 with Kimi. It's been like the battle of the titans for Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
And both these teams, as we came into the 2010s, kind of slipped away. And I think that's one of the reasons why Formula One's popularity went down a bit, because maybe McLaren, but also if a Ferrari is not doing well and if a Ferrari is slow on track, it's not winning, then I don't know if people want to watch that sport, right?
I think the one thing is with Ferrari is that they have such a great history. It's just statistically speaking, they're the most successful team in Formula One, period. And I think the one thing is that the Ferrari fans, the Tifosi, they're mad passionate about their drivers, about their cars, just about the brand for Ferrari. And I think that when we see it, that kind of dip in for in the form of Ferrari, and even there's many of McLaren fans, because there was we love to see that fight in Formula One. And I think maybe in the last few years that's been that's been missing a lot, that we've not had that challenger from another team. We've always, the biggest rival has been, someone, biggest rival to Lewis Hamilton essentially has been his teammate on Mercedes. So I think this year it's great that we have another challenger, but definitely, with teams like McLaren and Ferrari, we're starting to see a few signs that they're just starting to come up a little bit, and I think that's great for we have a little bit more competition, especially in those kind of third, fourth, and fifth positions.
So my question to you, right? Because if Max and Lewis, who are both known to be, Lewis is an aggressive driver. Let's not forget, he's balanced, but he's aggressive. Max, we know, is super aggressive, and we've had so many close passes between them. I think it's only a matter of time before one of they come together on track. So my question to you is, and before we quickly move on to maybe something about Aston Martin, is if these two are to collide, and even if they are not to collide, just generally over the next three races, which is on power dominated tracks, who do you think is in the best chance for the third place? Or if something happens between the leaders, who might be in the chance for a rare win?
Okay, I think a rare win, I'm actually going to give this to the McLaren driver, Lando Norris. In my opinion, I think for me, I'm really liking Lando Norris. First of all, mainly, he's the only driver in the entire grid that's scored points at every single weekend now, and that's really impressive. Because not only is he he's giving that consistent performance all the time, but if there was a crash to happen up in the front, I definitely think he's someone that's just always I would say he's performing at the level of, coming there and just.
Yeah.
But I just want, sometimes you need that luck in Formula One, and if he had that luck, I definitely think that he's someone I would probably pick as maybe someone who might be. Oh yeah, I didn't think a lot of people wouldn't suspect Lando Norris would win a race, and this is also a driver who came to Formula One now. Is his third season, right? Yeah, his third season in
Yeah.
Formula One, and he's already starting to really dominate. Kind of showing, that he's the main driver. He's actually, his teammate is Daniel Ricciardo, who's been in Formula One for a decade
Decade.
now. Has had success at Red Bull, came to moved to Renault, and now is at
For the
McLaren.
money.
Yeah, it's all different kinds of moves. And he's having a little bit of a tough season this year, while Lando is just being very consistent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think let's now move on to Aston Martin. And like you were describing the troubles of Daniel Ricciardo,
Yeah.
someone who's been in F1 for a decade,
Hmm.
Sebastian Vettel had a very turbulent, I think ever since his crash leading the race for Ferrari in his home Grand Prix Germany,
Yep.
the 2018 German Grand Prix. Then the Spinala. Spinala, for those who might not have heard, is basically a series of races where it became common that Sebastian's car would start spinning.
Yeah.
Like he would just lose control of the car and it would spin and he'd
Hmm.
lose a lot of positions.
Yep.
So he's had a very turbulent time the last few years. And recently in the Baku Grand Prix, he started 11th and somehow the guy managed to pass half the field and come second.
Yep.
And he'd not even finished in the top 10 in the last four races.
Hmm.
Comes to Monaco, does a brilliant job again
Yep.
with strategy, gets P5. But on a
Hmm.
track where, he didn't have to do much overtaking.
Hmm.
He comes here and he overtakes almost everyone, a
Yep.
Ferrari, a
Hmm.
McLaren, even a Red Bull at one point, and
Yeah.
definitely the Mercedes or Bottas,
Hmm.
which was just going backwards.
Yeah. I think you make a, I mean, you're bringing that point about Vettel and Aston Martin, and especially, him getting second in the last race in Azerbaijan, in Baku. So I want to ask you, do you think that was a fluke, or do you think you actually see something that Vettel actually showing his experience, and that he's starting to understand how the Aston Martin car drives?
Okay, so I think he's definitely starting to understand how the car drives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know it sounds surprising that a four-time world champion needs like so much time to get used to a car, but it's very important to know, guys, that each F1 car, I know they look very similar, everything like that, but they're very different.
Yeah.
Daniel Ricciardo, like we talked about, right? He's struggling because when he moved from Red Bull to Renault, he lost all confidence in his braking. When
Mm-hmm.
can he brake? And he was the late breaker move.
Yeah. He was considered like the
That's
overtake king. Yeah.
exactly overtake king because he could outbrake anyone. If anyone's braking at the 100-meter board, he'd probably break at 50 and still make it.
Yeah.
Not seeing that anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very important to get used to the car. Um, and it's not very easy. You can do hundreds of laps, but different cars have different setups. There's a lot of technical stuff which
Mm-hmm.
makes it very difficult, and you really just have to get a feel with the car. I think he's finally got that. But
Mm-hmm.
if it was a fluke, okay, I have to be honest. He shouldn't have been in the top three.
Yep.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
his teammates' crash somehow helped him. It wasn't intentional. You can't make a tire blow up on purpose at 300 kilometers an hour. That was really scary. But it helped him out, helped out his strategy. I think the
Mm-hmm.
person who we should be looking at in terms of outdriving their car,
Yep.
and their ability has to be the popular man, the gas man, Pierre Gasly.
Yep.
Ever since Drive to Survive, I think he's become the biggest name in Formula One recently. So, what do you think? Gasly versus Vettel, who is
Mm-hmm.
the big, underdog this season?
I personally will give this one to Gasly. I think I really thought, because if you didn't catch the last race in Azerbaijan, there was a lot of restarts. There was a lot of things with red flags. I think there was just so much happening. A lot of luck was
Yeah.
riding on for Vettel. But also no, he drove really well. I think the car suited the track really well. So I'll give that one, to Vettel. But I think on day in and day out basis, I think the one thing is we're seeing is from Red Bull, actually, we're seeing that Honda power is really, really powerful. And we're seeing the same thing in alphatauri. I think they, when, before they were known as Toro Rosso, they were kind of known as a very, very low midfield
sister
car.
team.
Yeah, they were really low midfield car. But, they're now considered to be actually they were actually more known as like the junior team, actually. And then now they're kind of known as, they're like, I think Red Bull almost
consider
them to be, there's more of an equal kind of the more equal kind of representation, I would say, for AlphaTauri. And I think their drivers, both Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda, they're both very, very quick. And it's looking like, for me personally, I'm quite excited to what Gasly's going to do. I'm seeing him in qualifying. He's almost, some races he's getting like fourth, fifth in the race in the qualifying, which is some great positions for AlphaTauri. So I think the biggest thing is we're just going to have to see. For the course of for the course of the next in the season, you're going to have various different kinds of tracks that will suit for each one of the cars and the drivers.
So I think before we wrap up, I think the last point would be next 3 races, again, like we said, power driven tracks. And you just pointed out, AlphaTauri also has a very good car for on the straights. Ferrari, on the other hand, Ferrari engine, not as powerful. Had pretty good races. Pole in the last 2 races in very awkward red flag situations. Controversial, to say the least. But so I think it's very clear it's going to be Red Bull versus Mercedes for the win. I know Perez won the last race. It was an amazing race for him. So I guess he's in the hunt maybe for a win as well. But over the next 3 races, it has to be Max versus Hamilton. I think they're going to be in a league of their own with their engine power and their aerodynamics. They'll leave everyone behind, even their own teammates, because I'm pretty sure Bottas is not in form this season. So I don't expect a lot from him in the next couple of races, maybe after the summer break. I think the important thing is going to be who's on the third step of the podium, right? There's always a chance, that, the two take each other out, have mechanical failures, everything like that. But I think it's very interesting because there's Aston Martin's now coming up. Obviously, Ferrari, maybe if their engine is doing better than we think it is, they might have a shot at a top 5. But it's really, I think, what would we say? McLaren, AlphaTauri, and Aston Martin, right? Who are you picking as your main challenger to the top 2 teams for the next triple header?
Yeah, I would say for me personally, it's going to be, I think Aston Martin personally are just not quite there yet. I think they've got a little bit more to do. And I definitely think also we forgot about one team, Alpine, who are doing, who've had a little bit of success, but I think Alpine is a little bit ahead of Aston Martin on more.
And it's their home Grand Prix this weekend.
Exactly, yeah. On more, on more traditional tracks that these are more traditional tracks that we're gonna that F1's gonna be going to now. So I will say McLaren. I think are McLaren at probably as the best challenger right now to the top 2 teams, and then I would put Ferrari actually there, because what I've been seeing from Ferrari is from the disastrous 2020 season, they've made some significant improvements not just on they're quite strong on maybe a little bit more of the slower tracks, but I'm also seeing even on the faster tracks that they're able to hold their own. I think that's really important. So and I think if they can hopefully keep on continuing, ride their luck a little bit more, I think for Ferrari fans, it's going to be a great time for them. Of course, I think for many fans, they want them to be back on top of the podium,
including us, right?
Yeah, including
us.
It's been a long
wait.
So hopefully we can maybe one day, maybe we might see something like that in a race, maybe in this season. We don't know. The season's been a little bit crazy here and there, but it's definitely been great.
So I think, guys, that's all we have for you today. So thanks for joining in again, and we'll see you soon. So keep watching Runs and Acceleration with Ruhan and Akash. This is all from us. Thank you. Bye bye.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.